Well, hello there. This is Craig Hain, and this is going to be a video on Chapter 5 in our book, How and Why Homeschool Math Can Be Vastly Superior to Public School Math. And I think you're going to really enjoy this particular video. This is Craig Hain, as I said. You can see all about me at my personal website. And this is the video on Chapter 5. So let's go right away to Chapter 5. Now, this is for college-bound students that are not interested in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And there's a lot of students that fall into this category. And this chapter is for parents of those students. They're going to go to college, but they're not really interested in science and engineering and technology. Now, for them, Tier 3 is going to be the key to this. In fact, it'll also be something that STEM students take too, but this is designed particularly for those students. Because in Tier 3, we have a whole bunch of math topics that a student's going to need to know for the SAT test. And there's also a sample SAT test, and there's also advice on taking timed tests of any kind. Now, we tell the student that there's probably going to be some topics which the student's never going to use for any other purpose and not find of any particular interest. Some they might, but not all of them. But they have to know these if they want to do well on the SAT. Now, this changes from time to time, and so this will be updated as time goes on, as the SAT evolves and changes. The ACT is another test, and it has even more topics at this particular time, 2019, than the SAT does, and so we have some supplementary videos on those topics. And most of these supplementary videos are selected from Tier 4, which is a much more advanced set of training for STEM students. Now, let me tell you that I am not a big fan of any of these tests, but we're stuck with them. If your student is going to select a college or a university where they're going to be required to take one of these tests, then they're unavoidable. You're going to need to check with the schools that you're going to be applying to. Now, I really don't know what's going to happen in the future. These tests, quite frankly, I don't think prove much of anything, and I think they're very misleading. But that's my opinion, and that's not something that that the university necessarily would agree with. Certainly, the math educators are behind these tests; they've created them. And here's a problem I believe these time tests have, in my opinion. They're all designed really to get what they call a bell curve distribution. In other words, they want sort of a few people at the top, a few at the bottom, and mostly in the middle. So what they do is, for these tests, there's a science behind it. They make a few very easy questions that really almost anybody can answer. I mean, you'd have to be really ignorant of math to not do those. Then they have quite a number of harder questions, but they're not too hard. And most people are going to get them if you're reasonably well prepared. But then what they do is they have a few very tricky, difficult questions. And if you haven't had special preparation, probably you're not going to be able to get them. Not on a time test. I took an SAT sample test, and it took me 20 minutes to do one of their questions. It's a time test. Now, once I figured out the trick, it was easy to do. And so if I had it again, I could do it. So what I do in Tier 3 is I try, as best I can, to teach you even these little tricky questions too. A lot of the reasonably hard ones you're already going to have learned and you're going to know about. But then there's going to be some tricky ones, and that's really kind of what I dislike about them intensely. Now, here's another irony. A student can score very high on the SAT or the ACT test and still be really, really unprepared for a good STEM school. Now, in Chapter 6, I'm going to tell you all about that. That's going to be probably the most important chapter in this book for any student that's interested in science or engineering. Well, if you want to do well on the SAT or the ACT, you can hire a tutor, and there's lots of programs for them. There are all kinds of programs available, and that's fine and dandy. I don't consider myself particularly good at this. I mean, I think I'm fine at it. I think our Tier 3 will do a pretty good job for you. And it's going to be a lot less expensive and a lot easier than going to some specialty program that's really expensive. Because remember, we utilize spike pedagogy. So it's self-paced, interactive. The student can learn at their own pace. And I believe that we're going to do a credible job for you getting you ready. And it probably will be a lot less expensive and a lot easier for the student because they can do it on their own time. But you'll have to make that decision. Now, what you want to do is go to Homeschooler Today and look at the curriculum and the pricing tabs and choose the best choice. And I'm going to look at that in a moment. I'm going to go over the syllabus with you in a moment. Generally speaking, the family plan is usually the best option. But if you need your student to study this over a long period of time, you may want to buy it a la carte. We'll look at that and see what that is. I suggest that you study the syllabi of the first 3 tiers and even tier 4 if you're going to take the ACT or the CLT test, because you're going to need a lot of material from them. Now, the facts are, if your student actually goes through tier 4, then they're going to be a whole lot better prepared than a student that's just gone through tier 3. But that's a lot more math too. A lot more math that you're going to learn in the next chapter when we talk about STEM. So what I want to do now is I want to look at the syllabi that you're going to have for this. Now, this is tier 3. We've already talked about tiers 1 and 2 in other chapters. Here's the table of contents. Now, I use for the first time in tier 3 a wonderful book by George Simmons called Pre-Calculus Mathematics in a Nutshell. And we only need a small part of that book for this third tier, but I do use part of it. We talk about the real number system. We talk about notation and rules that are you're going to need to know for these tests. We're going to talk more about exponents, roots, and radicals. We're going to talk. By the way, you're going to probably have to do most of this manually on these tests, but they rig them so that they can be done manually. Then we talk about things like polynomials, factoring polynomials. Now, this is not something we need for practical math, but you're going to need it for these tests. Then we're going to talk about linear algebra, the rule of algebra, and a lot of rules from linear algebra. The quadratic equation. Now, if you're not going to study STEM, you're never going to use this probably, but it's something you have to know for the test. Inequalities, absolute values, coordinates in a plane, functions and graphs. You got to know about those. Now, this is very important for STEM, by the way. So all STEM students are going to take tier 3. All of this is very good for STEM. You just don't need it for practical math if you're not going into college and take these tests. But you need it for the tests. Linear functions, parallel and perpendicular lines. All this is out of Simmons' book. I have some custom training that's not in Simmons' book that will be valuable. And part 1, this is part 1 we've just looked at, is going to prepare you for the standard test that you're going to need when you graduate from high school. Now, part 2 is going to give you a lot, and by the way, it depends on what test you're going to be given in your high schools. If you're taking some kind of an end-of-course assessment or something, this will get you ready for most of those. Now, part 2 of tier 3 is going to teach you additional mathematics you're going to need to excel on these tests. Now, some of this is kind of theoretical, and quite frankly, you won't need it. Some of it will be useful, some of it won't be. Prime numbers. Well, you need to understand that for these tests. A lot of number facts and ideas. Now, something is practical. In fact, we're going to include this in the consumer math, percents and percentage, chain discounts, markups and discounts, means, medians, and average. That'll be in quantitative reasoning probably. Ratios and proportions, quantitative reasoning. Logic, quantitative reasoning. Arithmetic progressions, geometric progressions. This is all important for STEM, by the way, but it's not something you'll use in your regular life, except you need it for these tests. Permutations, combinations, probability. That'll be some custom notes. And so that's what's going to happen in the in tier 3. Now, what I also do in tier 3 is I take an SAT and ACT and get you some preparation. So I talk about a pep talk, first of all. You got to learn to take tests. There's a real technique for it, and test preparation and test techniques when you take a test. This is very important. It's psychological. It's how you do it. It's getting ready. You want to think of a test as like a contest that you're going to, and it's a time contest, and you're competing with other students. I hate these things, but it's what we got to do. Then I give you sample problems from an SAT test that we did, and then there's some more fun and more games that we talk about getting you ready. So this is tier 3, and that is what you're going to want to take if you if you're going to go to college and take these tests. Now, in order to see how to buy it, you go to Homeschool Math, Homeschooler Today, and look at Math Curriculum. Click on that tab, and then you're going to be able to go, and you're going to be able to see, okay, here's Tier 3. Now, we've already in previous chapters talked about 1 and 2, practical math. Everybody needs that. This is valuable for everybody. This is for you guys that are going to go to college and take the SAT. Now, if you're going to study STEM, which we'll talk about in the next chapter, most of this will be valuable for you anyway. Those of you that are not going to study STEM, well, you got to learn it if you want to do well on these standardized tests. So that's what is involved. Now you can go down here, and you can also see how we work this into the credit for high school equivalency, and so on and so forth. Now, what about taking it? Well, this is what's included. Now, we're going to go to pricing. Let's look at the pricing and go to the math curriculum pricing. Well, again, the family plan is what a lot of people use. It's a monthly plan. You get me as your tutor, unlimited access. It's less than for one student, it's less than $1 a day. And in fact, you can get up to, I think, 4 students for not much more than $1 a day. And it's got all these. When you sign up for the family plan, you got access to everything. And you're going to have the Tier 1 and 2. Now you're going to have Tier 3, and of course Tier 4. Now, this is the family plan. Now, if you say, well, look, I'm not interested in the family plan. I just want to get ready for the SAT. Then you want to probably buy it a la carte. $297 gets you Tiers 1 through 3, and it's an unlimited amount of time. So if you're going to spend a couple of years with a student studying it, that's probably cheaper than the family plan. Family plan for one student would be $25 a month at this point in time. Now, these prices may change in the future, so don't hold me to these prices as far as this video goes. That's what it is today, which is 2019. And hopefully it won't go higher in the future. It depends on all sorts of things. The economy, inflation. I'll be talking about that in later chapters. And so this is the SAT. I call it Math Prep. It's also ACT and CLT too. Now, in the next chapter, of course, we're going to talk about STEM and getting ready for STEM. But this is for this chapter. So you either do the family plan or buy this a la carte for $297 for one student, and go for it, and you should do well on the SAT. So this is Dr. Dell, and I thank you for watching this video and reading this chapter 5, and I will see you on other chapters or on training videos, and I wish you the very best for yourself and your student. As you know, our goal is to help every student get the optimal math training they need for their desires. And this chapter is for people going to go to college that are not really interested in STEM. So Dr. Dell, I will see you on another video.